Hello, friends around the world. My name is Brandon Neighbor. Welcome to the Neighborhood, where we have switched on, fun discussions with some of the most brilliant, successful, experienced, talented, and highly skilled sales and marketing minds on the planet from the world's fastest growing companies. Enjoy. Hey everybody, today we've got Nick DeMarinis on the show. Nick is the Director of Enterprise Growth for WeWork, a pre-IPO unicorn with a valuation of $47 billion. Nick is based at their headquarters in New York City. Previously, he spent 13 years in the technology industry with Yahoo, a $4.5 billion acquisition by Verizon, and LinkedIn, a $27 billion acquisition by Microsoft, and they also IPO'd back in 2011. At LinkedIn, Nick held various leadership roles across both North America and Asia Pacific while based in Hong Kong. Nick holds a bachelor's degree from St. Leo University in Tampa, Florida, and a master's degree in international business from St. John's University in Rome, Italy. On a personal note, he has identical twin boys that just turned 1 and prays that one day the New York Knicks will be relevant again. Here we go. Mr. Nick D in the house. Good to have you on the show, man. Thanks so much for coming.
Neighbor, anything for you, my man.
Wow, anything. I like that. Don't tempt me. I am so excited to have you on. So one of the things I want to do is we're going to jump through some of your personal life, a little bit about where you grew up, how you grew up, what you were like. We'll run through all the way through school, and then what we'll hop into is the bulk of what we'll talk about today, which is your professional experience and talk about some of the frameworks, principles that you think about, and then we'll get into some of the methods as well. Some of the process and examples. Sound okay?
That sounds great. Excited to be here.
Awesome, man. Cool. So let's first talk about maybe 4 or 5 minutes on how you grew up. What was the life of Nick D like as a kid? What were you like? Tell me about some of your interests. Go through school a little bit and tell me about some of your hobbies. And I'll interrupt you, hopefully not too rudely, to ask you maybe a little bit more detail.
Yeah, totally. My parents grew up in New York. They met when they were 15, got married when they were 19, had their first kid at 20, and then had 6 children. Irish Italian family. We drink with one hand, we talk with the other. And my dad was in sales his whole career, right? My dad was in sales his whole career, and he always valued relationships, and he was very successful kind of end to end in his career on the basis of relationships. And me being one of 6 kids, growing up, we're always very competitive. Who's the first one to get to the bathroom in the morning, take a shower? I was also like a middle child, so I had to be pretty diplomatic in my approach, right? I couldn't be this like authority as like the oldest, and I couldn't be like, hey, I can get away with anything as a baby. I kind of had to play both ends of the spectrum. So I learned that kind of early on of how to kind of manage relationships up and down and sideways. And I was, we just loved sports. We loved being competitive, all of us. And I never really got too deep in a single sport because I just loved the ideas of other sports and trying those out and getting good at those. And, in particular, I just love team sports, right? I think individual sports were fun, but I love the idea of like going to battle with others. Although I grew up in Florida, unfortunately, my father raised me as a New York sports fan. So I had to adopt, the New York Knicks and the New York Jets, which are horrible sports teams. But what it's taught me, through my dad's professional career, through their marriage of over 50 years, through being a New York Knicks fan, as hilarious as it is this idea of loyalty, right? There's been a lot of lessons around loyalty through, and it might be tough times for a very long time. There's gonna be ups and downs, but that's what I learned a lot growing up.
Cool. So tell me about what was the first thing you did to make money?
First thing I did to make money. Well, I sorted through a bunch of baseball cards that I inherited kind of from my older brothers. And I went through the Beckett magazines that showed how much these cards were worth. And I tallied all up, and I thought I was going to make, thousands of dollars off these cards. But I was kind of talked out of it to hold on to those as an investment for later in life. So that's not how I made money. I thought that's how I was going to become rich. First way I made money was really concession stand at the Little League field. Spent a lot of time as a young kid playing baseball, and then just once I got to that certain age, I think it was 13, which when they allowed you to actually work the concession stand and sell M&Ms, making whatever the minimum wage was. That was it. So yeah, it was a very efficient way to make money because as soon as my shift was over, it's back to the field, back to playing ball.
Nice. So you make the jump to St. Leo. Why St. Leo? Tell us maybe a couple minutes about what life was like for you in school.
Yeah. I was a hockey player in Florida, and I was pretty good, in the state of Florida. You compare me against, kids that grew up in Michigan and it was definitely below average. But I wanted to play college hockey, and we went on a few recruiting trips. And, we decided that, really the cost of schooling at some of these Northeastern schools versus the cost of tuition in Florida in state. And I had to make a call whether I want to enjoy university and the life that comes with being a student versus like playing a college sport and struggling with tuition costs and being at the mercy of like 5 a.m. practices. And I kind of made a call there. And St. Leo was a nice balance of, it had smaller classroom sizes. It wasn't like University of Florida or FSU, which you're in an auditorium. I wanted a smaller, more intimate environment where I could just get to know my professors, get pretty hands-on with the curriculum. And that's how I went to St. Leo. Enjoyed every minute of it.
Nice. So you had a life-changing experience when you studied over in Rome. Over time, when you live enough places, you turn adventure into lifestyle, and then you just kind of never go back. But I'm guessing that was the start and the first step of that for you. So tell us about heading over to Rome to study there, and then we'll hop into your first role after school.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't have said it any better. That absolutely was a turning point in my life where it turned like adventure into a lifestyle. And that adventure and overcoming it, as tough as it felt in the moment, has been like the foundation of how I think about all future challenges and future adventures, as small and big as they are. Because, for a lot of us growing up in the US or anywhere in the world, right, for you to branch outside of your comfort zone into, a new world with a new language, it can be really scary at the moment, in the moment. But, I decided it was in my senior year of college, and that was no time better than then to make that leap. And I had roots in Italy, right? It's where family came from. So there was a lot of like self-interest in what I wanted to accomplish and get out of that experience. And, that's what I did. So I made the move there. Funny enough, on day one, I met a girl there who was also studying the same program, who's now my wife.
Whoa. So that's how you guys met.
That's how we met.
Awesome.
There was another girl that went to the same school, and I asked her, how's your living situation? She's, I'm living with 5 girls. I said, I'll be there in 2 minutes. And when I got there, I was introduced to Diana, and that was my future wife. So that was the best part of that experience. But I think outside of that as well, it was just open up my eyes to, that there's another world out there. There's other cultures. There's other way of living life and doing business. And I enjoyed it so much in that study abroad program, which was 1 semester. I basically stayed there and then applied to graduate school. St. John's had a program there. Ended up staying in Italy for like almost 2 years. I really just wanted to learn more business. I wanted to learn a language. I wanted to not just have this like a 4-month point in life. I wanted to kind of embed myself. So it was a great journey.
All right, cool. So let's. So you come back from Rome. Walk us through your first couple roles up through the point where you're going to make a jump to LinkedIn, and we'll pause there and ask you a couple questions. But you had some really interesting, good, significant learning experiences before you got to LinkedIn. Let's walk through those.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's not on my profile is I did work on Wall Street for 2 days. Actually, it was like a day and a half, I think. When I was going through college, and I was kind of like a little bit of a direction from my father was kind of like, get into finance. You're going to make a good living. It's going to be stable. That should be your path, and you're pretty good at it. And that's kind of what I studied, and I wasn't really sure if that was my path or not. But it's hard to really understand until you get into the professional workforce. So I moved to New York. I worked on Wall Street. It was a small commodities broker, and I don't know how I realized this, but I realized pretty quickly it was not for me. Maybe it was the specific company. I don't know if it was the environment. I just got an idea that I don't think this is right. Something in my gut tells me that. I remember quitting. I called my father and I said, you're going to be really disappointed with me, but I just don't think this is the industry for me. I don't think this is the path. I need to do some searching here. And he was so supportive. He was like, I'm so proud that you've kind of figured this out so quickly. Like you fail quickly is like this thing that is really hard to do. So I did that, went back to the drawing board. This is the first idea that I had around really building this like personal board of directors. I started to think through, okay, who can help me figure out what is the industry I should be in? What is the job? What kind of function should I be looking for? And I got some really good advice from some people in my corner. And, I landed a job at a place called University Sports Publications. it was kind of, it married two parts of two things that I thought I'd be really passionate about, which is sales and like speaking to people, and sports, right? So that was a good experience. It was kind of a boiler room setting. It was, a lot of phone calls. It was a lot of rejection. You're selling advertising and there's like game-based sports programs to contractors and subcontractors. So it wasn't as glorious as the job description sounded, but what it taught me was resilience, right? This idea of like following the sales structure, of like overcoming objectives, of the value of like, sharing, peers and name dropping others in the industry that are using that. So taught me a lot about like the frameworks of a sales process and how to be resilient in that if you have the right solution. So kind of sucked in the moment, but it taught me a lot there.
Yep.
Again, the culture wasn't something I was really looking for. It was very, very results driven, very, very kind of cutthroat. And, I got a referral to get an interview at Yahoo, and, had a few interviews there and really felt like that was a company that more aligned to, what I was looking for in the technology space. And, Yahoo, the culture at the time was way more accommodating to my type of personality. And joined Yahoo in 2007.
Awesome. Walk us through the roles you had at Yahoo. You were there for about 4 years. So walk us through a couple of those roles. And then I've got a few questions on some of the things you learned while you were there.
Yeah. So the roles at Yahoo, it was primarily, it's primarily different sales roles. So I was either selling recruitment advertising to recruitment agencies or to corporates. There was a little bit of like an account executive, so selling to first-time customers, bringing them on board, a lot of prospecting, a lot of sales development, a lot of cold outreach. And then later on in my career at Yahoo, it was more around relationship management and how do we help them and make sure they're having success using our solutions and make sure they're happy customers, and we're leveraging that to the best of its ability. So that was mostly the crux of my time in the 4 years at Yahoo.
Nice. Awesome. And what do you think were maybe what was the number one thing that you think you learned at Yahoo?
Number one thing I learned at Yahoo would probably be, I would think it's, the value of your boss. I had some really great bosses at Yahoo. Before that, the bosses were kind of like dictator type figures, and the bosses I had at Yahoo were very much more around my leadership philosophy, which is way more democratic. Anytime we were like making decisions, we were thinking about a way to approach the business or approach our customers. It was very much involving everybody, and there was always a sense of authority when they needed to have it. Right? If we had a healthy debate around something, that person also knew when to come in and say, "Hey, great, I value all the feedback, and this is how we're going to move forward." But really took the time to like value everyone's opinion and have it a team approach in terms of like how we solve any types of questions, any types of problems.
Nice one. That's good. Let's hop into LinkedIn. Walk us through the journey you had at LinkedIn over the next few minutes on the roles that you had, the jumps that you made, and what you're responsible for in each one.
Yeah, absolutely. So the jump to LinkedIn, right place, right time. Yahoo Hot Jobs, which is the property I was working for, was bought by a monster. That was kind of going through a transition I wasn't incredibly happy about. And LinkedIn was opening up a new office on the East Coast. And got introduced to James Volpates and Scott Nelson. And we had a dinner, and they were looking to build a sales team in New York. So I was part of the first sales team in New York. There was about 12 or 15 of us in a serviced office. And that was an incredible journey. At the time, LinkedIn had about 80 million members. And that was, we're really bringing on our earliest customers in terms of using this professional network as a platform to find passive talent. So that was a sales role, pure hunter, selling the dream about what this professional platform was going to become and how it can help companies, solve a lot of their hiring needs. So the biggest jump from there was, moving to Hong Kong. So you want me to go ahead and take you into that kind of decision as well?
Yep.
Yeah, totally. So this was, I realized pretty quickly on at LinkedIn, this was going to be a global platform, like no doubt about it. It's going to be a global network that a lot of people and professionals will be able to benefit from in creating economic opportunity. And we started to think about opening offices. And as you know as well, opening offices all around the world, in Asia and in Europe. And, going back to that adventure of living in Italy, I thought, how can I parlay that into an adventure somewhere else? Maybe a bit more of an intelligent risk for me. And I was thinking about different offices. There's Dublin, there's Sydney, and I wanted something a little bit more of a challenge. So we started talking internally about Hong Kong. And it was a very strategic market for us, right, as a gateway into China. And we wanted to be that first professional network into China. So, I spoke to my manager at the time. I said, what does it take? We need people there. And this is about a year before that. And his advice was, just be great at your job right now, right? And then when the time is right, we can discuss that opportunity. So that's what I did. I put my head down. I tried to master the role I was currently in. I want to be very, very clear about what kind of value am I going to bring to a new market in terms of bringing that like LinkedIn headquarters culture and DNA, and making sure that's being spread through new markets and new cultures.
Yep.
And made the jump to Hong Kong in 2013.
And tell us what you're responsible for in Hong Kong and how your role grew a little bit.
Yeah. So initially it was a little bit of everything, right? I think of the role as you're helping hire for the team, you're helping bring on your early customers, you're helping define your early culture. You're doing a little bit of everything, and we're all doing it together. It wasn't like a figurehead of the office. It was a few of us that come together to drive that. So I helped bring on some of our earlier customers, helped make a lot of decisions around our hiring and building out the team. Setting some of the traditions around our office, such as like new hire introductions and like special talents and costumes, just things that kind of lighten the mood that are consistent with like the way LinkedIn does things. And of course, as the business grew and the team grew, that evolved into a leadership position. And I always kind of raised my hand of, hey, I'm ready to be a utility player in leadership of where you need help. So, at that time we were thinking about growing our teams in Southeast Asia. So I started to manage account executives in Singapore and Japan and start to, build our business and build our customer base in those markets, which is a great experience for me, just being able to like manage remote teams and all the challenges that comes with that, as well as managing, multiple cultures. In Japan, for specifically, managing teams that hardly speak the same language, right? And it's really hard to be able to add a lot of value, even when they're going on customer engagements, when it's speaking a different language as well. So I had to really think about where's the areas I'm going to be able to add value. A lot of that for me was like removing a lot of internal barriers for them. Like I can't help them in like how they're speaking to their customer, but I can help remove the process and remove some of the friction that's helping them get their job done. So that was a lot of my learnings in terms of like, I got to be really clear about where I'm going to be add value and where I'm not, right? When you're managing different teams and different cultures. And then, towards the end of my time there, it was, managing more of like a holistic team across the Hong Kong office of kind of end to end from sales development to global accounts, and how I brought those teams together and just kind of gone really deep within the Hong Kong market specifically across, the different teams and different segments.
It is an amazing journey, and you've sold for a long time and helped sell for a long time. I know from hearing from other people how hands-on and close to the front line you are with being able to help out with your sales reps and teaching and coaching them on how to sell, best practices, et cetera. And one of the things that I've heard both from you and from other people is this concept of becoming a trusted advisor. So when you're talking to your teams and your sales teams, both WeWork, LinkedIn, and you're giving advice, tell us a little bit about that concept of being a trusted advisor and how you explain that to people.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't be more passionate about like the equation that comes with, being a trusted advisor. And I think some people snooze off as soon as I start to give them an equation, but hear me out. This idea of trusted advisor, it gets thrown around quite a bit, right? And there's different definitions, but I think this one I really subscribe to and I really hammered home. And as I think about our relationships, our sales process, qualifying deals, qualifying our accounts. And I think it's really telling as we break down the different parts. So if we think about trusted advisor, there's a numerator and there's a denominator, right? And on the numerator, there's really three parts to how you become a trusted advisor to your client. And that could be a client that you worked with forever or a client that you just met yesterday, right? And the first is credibility, right? Are you credible in what you're speaking about? The industry, your product, how it's going to perform, right? Like, you need to be able to be a subject matter expert on what you're sharing to your client. And this goes with sharing to candidates as well and hiring. There's a lot of ways to apply this. So credibility is one. I think, on reflection for me at WeWork, I've been here 4.5 months. That's an area of development for me. Like, I'm in a new industry in real estate. There's a lot going on. We're transforming the industry. Like, I'm not as credible as I want to be yet. And I'm taking a lot of steps to be able to build that. The second part of the equation is around reliability. So, this is simple as, are you following through with what you say you're going to do? Are you delivering on your solutions? Are you saying, hey, I can get you that proposal by Friday at 5 p.m.? Are you doing that? Right. And the minute people start saying, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and they don't follow through with it, you start to lose not only your credibility, you lose your trust and become a reliable individual. Lastly on that, so we have credibility, kind of knowing your subject. We have reliability, which is you're going to do what you say you're going to do. And last is around intimacy. I think this is the most important. I couldn't be more passionate about the idea that people buy from people, right? I do it all the time, and there's a lot of value in things that I buy, but I really like to know who I'm buying from and why I'm buying from an individual, and getting to know that and that side of things. So I think a lot about intimacy and how we approach our customers. How well do we know them? How well do we know how this is going to impact their personal lives? Do we know their dog's name? Like, the more we can get to know and get to intimate with our customers, and whether that's there's someone that's buying from us or we're going to be hiring them, there's just that stronger of a bond, that stronger of a relationship there. And you can even ask for favors sometimes, right? As you get to stuck in certain areas based upon that relationship.
Do you have go-to categories that you know that are attached to people's hearts so that you can get closer to them or more intimate with them more quickly?
A lot of it comes down to research, right? I think looking at whether it's LinkedIn profiles or checking them in the news, just finding out what they care about, right? And making sure that I can align that with the intimacy factor, right? If someone cares about, wolf conservation, I've adopted rescue dogs from Hong Kong. There's like maybe some parallels there, and just trying to get to know like what and why they care about that. Family is an easy one, right? Me having twin boys. We did an executive event last week in Chicago at the Rolling Stones concert, and a lot of them had families, right? And I just wanted to really get to know about their families, their kids, the schools that they're looking to attend, and just really got to know them on like an intimate level around their families. And I was able to share my own experience right now as my kids are kind of like very young and growing up. So there's not really specific categories. I just try to do a lot of research and understand, in their personal lives, what's going on, what do they care about.
No, that's good. That's good. All right. Sorry. Keep going.
Yeah. So on top of all that, so in terms of trusted advisor, there's the denominator, which is self-orientation. So I think people can be very credible. They can be super reliable, and you can be very intimate and like really getting to know your customers. But the minute that self-orientation is showing really high, that there's a lot more in it for me, right? That I'm trying to gain out of it. That starts to ruin a bit of the trusted advisor type of relationship that you have with the customer. So I think a lot of people try to focus too much on the top, and then they don't think enough about self-orientation and what's in it for them. And that sometimes starts to shine at certain moments, which can really ruin the equation there. So I think that's really important. Taking self-orientation out of the equation. If you're solving the right thing for your client, if you're being credible, reliable, intimate, like they should be able to want to move forward regardless of like what you're wanting to gain out of that.
That's awesome. I love the equation. Anytime someone breaks down something into an equation or a framework or a data-driven approach or something along those lines, I think people's ears perk up because it's repeatable, and you can also pass it on more easily as well. One of the things that I've heard about you from a lot of other people as well is the power of coaching. And I know that you've gone through certification with Marshall Goldsmith. And I'd love to learn a little bit about, and have the audience learn a little bit about some of the top learnings and the top takeaways you had from that Marshall Goldsmith training and learning process, and also how you apply those, maybe with some examples that you use, across your teams.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, Marshall Goldsmith was just an incredible investment that I was fortunate to be able to go through that workshop. He's world-renowned coach, and there's a couple things that I've learned from that executive course. And Marshall Goldsmith, his coaching framework is really centered around like stakeholders, right? So there's an idea of I think of coaching in two ways. There's like firsthand observations, objective observations, and being able to coach that way about what's observed, not about how I feel that person did, but I observed this. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. Marshall Goldsmith was really around perception is reality. Let's find out like what your stakeholders think about what you can do to improve, and perception is reality there. And let's use feed forward to be able to help an individual improve on that. So here's kind of how he breaks it down. I think, first around coaching is, making sure that individual picks the one or two growth areas that they want to focus on, put that in their court, right? What do you want to focus on to get better at that is important to both you, but also aligns with your organization, right? So let's say, for example, is managing through change, right? That's important for me. It's also important for our organization. This place is changing like every 3 minutes. Next is to lead that, lead the change and the coaching through stakeholders. So really involving like your directs, your peers, your bosses, and there's this idea of Marshall Goldsmith, which is capturing feed forward rather than feedback. So, if I'm asking you to give me some feed forward on managing through change, I wouldn't say, Brandon, give me some feedback on how I managed change in the past. Like we don't care about the past right now. I would say, Brandon, give me some suggestions on how I can get better at managing change moving forward. And it's a really cool, powerful tool around feed forward, which is like, you're not reflecting on what's happened. You're reflecting on like what could be beneficial to us moving forward. And that's really the crux of it. Like the individual that's being coached then takes that, they've identified the area they want to get better at. They're getting feed forward from the people around them that they care about. And again, it's this idea of perception is reality. Whether they're right or wrong, these are people that have suggestions for someone to get better, right? Perception is reality. Let's take that. Let's put an action plan together. And then, part of the Goldsmith plan as well is to, to regularly check in to see how that person's performing moving forward.
How do you build in the importance of recognition, and how do you think about recognizing others? What's your framework?
Yeah, so I think I'm probably in the camp of, I think there's no such thing as too much recognition. I think that there's so much success that individuals and teams have because of like the confidence that they're getting from other individuals. And if they are, whether it's a small task or large task, if they're hearing that people are grateful for what they did or they're proud of what they did, I think confidence is really what drives people forward and creating that type of environment. So, I think of, I try to build in recognition in so many facets, right? Whether that's in way people lead and way they deliver results and the short interactions that they have with individuals. I try to bake it into my daily life, and whether that's a quick email or over Slack or whether it's a phone call, there's something that I do every Friday, which is I have a 6 p.m. recurring calendar invite, which is actually more centered around gratitude. So it's more around, rather than recognizing an individual for what they've done, I try to do that like as I go throughout my day, and it spurs at different moments. I don't really have a framework around that, but I do have a framework around making sure that I thank at least one or two people every Friday at the end of a week for what they've done. So whether that's an individual that had handled a difficult customer call and I want to thank them for really stepping up and showing leadership, or, for example, last Friday, I sent a note to a peer of mine who was really instrumental in helping me ramp here at the company, was really selfless in his time and walking me through like the internal relationships and how to think about navigating the company. And, without that, I probably would continue to be lost here at WeWork. So that's a few ways of I think about it. I think recognition, it's never too much. I think that we should be recognizing small things, little things, like as much as possible. In my mind, I feel like that just continues to build confidence in individuals for them to continue to push themselves forward. And then I think about, gratitude as a really powerful recognition, not just for those that are making an impact to me and to the team, but also, it feels good for my side to really be able to show that the impact that they're having on me, it does not, it's really meaningful.
Yeah, love it. And two questions on that. One, One is like, how are you doing this? Is it email? Is it verbally? Is it walking over to their desk? Is it a one-on-one? Is it closed door conversation? Is it in front of the team? Like, there's so many different ways to do this. How do you think about that? And how are you doing this? What's your strategy around it?
Yeah. So mostly around like recognition, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I try 100% of the time to do it in person. I'm a big believer in, I think this goes with like every type of interaction. I try to be very, very conscious and mindful of the setting and the atmosphere, right? So around recognition, I try to make sure it's in like, whether it's in a walking meeting or outside or try to have it over. It's got to be in person for me. And it could be just hey, let's take a walk in, to the lobby of our office. I try to have it in some type of more of a warm, casual type of environment. So mostly the recognition is like always in person. I feel like it's easy for us to be able to use like online platforms and text and whatnot, but be able to look somebody in the eyes and be able to tell them wholeheartedly, this isn't just like I'm trying to take off recognizing you today. To be able to like speak to them and really have that moment where, hey, you've made a difference, you made an impact, whether it's small or large, and it's important that we share this in person, and I thank you for that. That I think 100% of the time in my mind needs to happen in person. It's really easy for us to be able to use so many different communication platforms and ways to connect. Being able to do that in person is, for me, is really powerful.
Nice, good one. And my follow up to that is, what have you seen as the pull through of that? What are some, like, as in, what happens when you do that right? What do people like? What is the next couple of actions, or like, what have you seen as some of the results from the people that you're saying thank you to, and you're being grateful towards verbally out loud? Like, what does that do for both of them? What does it do for the team? What's the environment that it creates, so that people that are going to be more conscious in the audience of doing this, like you mentioned, what can they expect to be the output? Yeah,
absolutely. That's a great question. So I think, one of my superpowers is positivity, right? So
right.
I'm always trying to index on, bringing in a positive atmosphere, positive feedback as much as possible. And I'm also a big believer in focusing on strengths, not in weaknesses. There was a Harvard Business Review podcast around like constructive feedback is kind of pointless, that we should be focusing on what people do great and focus on their strengths. So, when I think about recognition, for example, there's an individual a couple weeks ago that really managed this sales process in a short time frame really, really well. Was really tight around the beginning, kind of discovering, understanding what the client wants to achieve, to understanding like the deal leverage that we had in order to be able to accomplish it in a short period. And I recognize that individual, and what I'm hoping the pull through that I'm hoping to get out of that is, I asked the individual to share that forward. Like, this is a strength of yours. I want to recognize you because you did a great job at that. How do we scale this goodness? How do you take that and share this experience, share your deal review with other members around you? There's so much that people can learn from you. And what I hope to get out of that, which happens a lot of times, is that person is then there's a ripple effect around the benefits of what that person accomplished. And they're getting so much confidence from that. They're like, wow, I did something really well. I'm able to share a lot of individuals, and they're going to take that forward into their next actions, their next couple of days of work, with so much confidence around, I did something great. I was able to share that with other individuals, and I know how to bring this forward to the rest of my week. So those are a couple of things that I think about in terms of recognition, is like, let's focus on the strengths. How do we take whatever you did really good at? How do we share that? How do we scale that across others? And recognition for me, I think it's always to inject this amount of confidence in individuals that they can then just continue to find success in whatever they're doing moving forward.
Awesome, man. That's great. All right, let's make a jump into WeWork. Talk about when you left LinkedIn, how and why you made that jump, what you're responsible for right now, and then I've got a few more questions around some of the things that you, one, took from LinkedIn into WeWork, and two, how you're applying some of the things that I'm going to ask about at WeWork as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's funny. It was about 14 months ago. It was 2 weeks before my kids were born, and a friend of mine from Yahoo, he messaged me. He at the time he was now at WeWork, and he said, we're growing like crazy. We're looking for great sales leaders in Asia. And I said, absolutely not the right time. I'm about to have twin boys, and I love what I do. I'm at LinkedIn. I love what I do right now. So I think you should have a chat. So I had a chat with him. His name is Nick Warswick, and just absolutely loved the conversation. I said, okay, well, let's speak to some more people at WeWork. Had a few more conversations, and that was the crux at how this began. Was that there was just some really talented, really thoughtful, really ambitious people that I kept speaking to, and that was kind of the number one reason of why I thought to kind of move forward with this path to WeWork was the talent. The second was really around the mission of the company. And as you know as well, being at LinkedIn, like super powerful, true north mission of connecting professionals to create opportunity. And we saw that manifest itself in so many stories, which was incredible. So I always told myself, if I'm going to go to another company, it's going to be with one of a mission that I truly care about. And what I saw there was that LinkedIn was really good at connecting professionals online for them to make an impact in their career and their lives. And WeWork was really looking to do that offline, in physical space and physical environments. And I was like, that's really cool. It's almost like going back in time. That should have happened first. But WeWork's actually bringing more of that personal touch and element back to networks, which LinkedIn did really good at scaling that digitally. And WeWork's mission of helping people create a life, not just a living, right? To be able to work in beautiful spaces and accomplish great things. And when I was at LinkedIn in Hong Kong, we had a beautiful space, right? And we took it for granted. People would come in and we'd bring clients and groups and students, all kinds of people. We'd tour them around, and 10 times out of 10, people would say, I would love to work in an environment like this. And I started to think, man, everyone should be able to work in like a beautiful environment. Everyone should be able to really enjoy the environment that they're working in. Not that's just aesthetically pleasing, but also has a community that brings it to life. So that was a really big part of how I thought about WeWork. And lastly is the growth story, right? I think about transformation and the adventure of going to Italy. I just thought about, how do I continue to learn and transform myself? And this was an opportunity to go back in time to a company that's still trying to figure out a lot of things, but has a really great growth trajectory. And I wanted to be a part of that and take a lot of what I've learned to apply it to this story.
So I have 3 questions about this, and then we'll wrap. First one is, you've been at a few different businesses that are known for having kick-ass cultures, really good cultures. And that has got to be ingrained into the fabric of what people do at all times in order for it to actually sustain and persist over time. What have you noticed as the common themes? I know it's still the honeymoon period right now for WeWork, but at the same time, when you know what a movie looks like and you've seen a movie before, it can be a little bit different, but you know that you like it and you kind of recognize the things that you've seen in the other movies that you like, right? So when you think about LinkedIn, when you think about the things you really liked at Yahoo, what you're seeing right now at WeWork, what are some commonalities between those businesses that they have in their cultures that every business should subscribe to and try to do really well?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first thing that comes to mind, which I probably think is most powerful, is this idea of collaboration, right? This idea of at WeWork, we call it, we over me. I think, there was such a team type of mentality, even though you're in individual sales sometimes at Yahoo. And then at LinkedIn, we talked so much about building connective tissue across our teams and building collaborative cultures, and a lot of that manifests in the way that we went to market, right? And the way we conducted our business. And it's our first value at WeWork as well is we over me, which is there's no individual that can come in and try to accomplish great things themselves, right? The minute we can come together and think about how to tackle big challenges, big problems, difficult clients, complex situations collectively, that's how we're going to be successful. And then that manifests in our products as well at WeWork, right? These beautiful spaces that we're delivering, we try to have this idea of community where people can at some point come together and collaborate and innovate and discuss and drive their businesses forward. And that's been like the common thread, I think, across all these companies. There's no type of me or individual attitude. It's we're going to win and fail together. That's going to be our mentality.
That's great, man. Thanks. This is a good example. This is a specific WeWork question. When you think about the power of a workspace, the power of an office space, for those that are either doubters or neutral on the value of that to a team from an engagement, performance, happiness, etc. perspective, can you give us a couple of passion points or reasons why this is really important to think about, and this is why you should be thinking about it for your teams?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I think about workspace, I don't think it as much as like what it looks like in the field. I mean, that's really important, having different types of areas for different groups of different cohorts, whether that's focused work, whether that's collaborative areas. I think more around the energy and the activation side of it. We work at LinkedIn in Hong Kong, for example. We had 14,000 square feet and about 50 employees. And it was just really hard to drum up the right amount of energy because there was just too much space that we weren't utilizing. So put aside like the financial aspect of like, I think we have too much space based upon our employee count. It was just really hard to get a lot of energy from that. So a lot of what we think about at WeWork is how do we create those right density levels that you're not on top of each other, but you're creating the right amount of energy. And we have so much data on so many companies that we're working with, especially our enterprise customers, who now makes up more than 40% of our customer base. We're able to really design really cool spaces that activates and creates the right amount of energy at the right density levels for organizations, right? Corridors, we consciously put them in a certain type of, depth or whatever the metrics you want to use, so that people you have collision zones, and you might be able to say, hey, good to see you. I haven't seen each other in a while. And you create these interactions through how we design spaces. And, at WeWork in HQ here, it's, we've really kind of pushed the envelope in terms of density levels. And there's a lot of individuals working in different types of environments. And what that's done is it's created an energy level that's infectious, right? That there's just a lot of excitement, about what you do. There's constant interactions happening every single day because of how the space is designed. So, I think the takeaway for me is just really thinking about space in terms of like, what type of energy are you looking to have? What type of activation do you want to have for your employees, and being able to build beautiful spaces around that.
Nice. I've got one more for you, and then we'll wrap. So the last one I want to talk about is the power of storytelling, and using that as a vehicle to inspire customers, inspire teams, etc. So how do you think about the power of storytelling? What's a framework that you use, and how are you bringing that to life at WeWork? Maybe with a couple of examples that you've applied since you've been there, or just generally how you're applying it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, storytelling is such a powerful mechanism to inspire and to motivate and to bring ideas and experiences to life. And I learned a lot through the power of storytelling through when I was running the transformation theme for LinkedIn a couple years ago. So every year we focus on one culture of value, and we try to really to try to drive that home across our global sales organization. And a couple of years ago, it was the idea of transformation, and we thought early on, how do we bring this idea of transformation to life? We're going to define it, but also we're going to bring it to life through storytelling. So we're going to create a framework for transformation, and then we're going to share that through stories throughout the entire year.
Cool.
And the culture of transformation at LinkedIn, we talk about it as like transformation of self, company, and world. And there was a particular story of transformation that was really powerful. This woman in Australia, she really struggled early on in her role, and she also struggled at home. Her son was very sick, and she had to kind of overcome both of those challenges, and she was able to do that through the people that she worked with and her leader, and through the support of the people that she worked with. And she told this fascinating story that ended up with her son becoming very healthy through the support, as well as her becoming very successful in her role. And through that story, people were able to understand how people's lives can be transformed both personally and professionally. And one way that I'm bringing that to WeWork is right now in the moment, we feel like there's a lot on our shoulders. Like we're at a stage of the company which it's just where there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
And an exercise that
massive compounding growth, $47 billion valuation, pre-IPO, rapid growth with employees, like tons of stuff on your shoulders. Lots of spotlight as well. I totally get it. It makes sense.
Exactly. So among all that, it's hard to keep your eye on like the future, right? And I try to always think about that. Like think about the story that we're going to be able to tell a year, to 5 years from now. And there's an exercise that I like to do that I'm going to be doing with my leadership team coming up, which is, I might be getting the name wrong, but I think it's called doom or boom storytelling, right? So what we want to do is like, we're each going to tell a story around two paths. Let's tell a story about, let's just say this gets screwed, right? Where this is going to be a doom. Like, what goes wrong? Okay, we're going to hire the wrong people. We're going to miss all of our sales targets. We're going to lose our culture, and I think I want to hear those stories of like where things go wrong. And then a story of where things go really well, right? If we're going to be really successful in the next year or two, what has to go right? Well, we brought great people on board. We were selling some of the biggest contracts ever, or whatever it is. And what that does is it helps us like really illustrate and picture, what those stories could look like. More importantly, I think it helps us identify the trends in the bad story that we want to make sure we get ahead of now. So there's always like common trends you start to see in these like, these really bad stories. It's like, cool, what can we do to resource and get ahead of these right now so this doesn't happen? Cool, let's do that. And then like the story that goes really well, like kind of like focusing on strengths, right? Like, let's make sure we like double down on those efforts. Whatever's going really well, how do we invest more time and resources in that? So I think power of storytelling is really important to kind of bring experiences to life, as well as like thinking ahead of what you want your stories to be. Let's think about those on two different tracks, and let's learn from both of those.
Love it, man. That's great. All right. You've been super generous with your time. I really appreciate it. And I've got 2 rapid fire questions for you, and then we'll break. Okay.
Awesome.
Cool. First one, you've been in some really high stress jobs. You've been in some time intensive jobs. What are your best 2 or 3 tips on work-life balance?
Yeah, I got two that I feel pretty strong about. One is I make this place work for me, not this place, not work for this place, right? So I don't let a company or role dictate how I need to think about my family, my wellness. I make sure that I integrate that in, and I'm very vocal about that. And that kind of leads into the second part of it. Second part is just work-life balance is to communicate it. I don't think there's really such thing as work-life balance. I think it's harmony. Our lives are just way more connected than we possibly think. But a lot of us are afraid to like talk about what we care about and what matters to us outside of work, whether that's my kids and dogs, whether that's someone that loves to go to concerts, or they have, they're really passionate about wellness. My biggest tip on that is just let's talk about it. Let's share with our peers and our bosses and those around us, like what we do, what we care about, and how we can integrate that. Let's set expectations around how we work and how we communicate, what's off limits, what are our pet peeves. And I think that's probably the 2 things that are most passionate to me. Like I don't try to find that balance. I try to find harmony in the 2 and figure out ways to make that work. And the second is I over communicate. Like everyone here knows that I try to get home for bath time by 7 because I really care about that with my kids. But I wake up at 6 and I'm more than happy to take a phone call at 6 a.m, right? Everyone's different. I wanted to get to know my team, what they care about, how they like to work. I think too many times we think about work life and we kind of try to figure out ourselves. I think we just need to get it out there and let's talk about that with our team. Let's talk about how we solve that. And it can be a really, really healthy conversation.
Nice. Love it. Last question. It's got 2 parts. Because I want to talk about your twins for a second. First one is, and that'll be the second part. First one is, my audience knows this, but I'm going to explain for the guests. I ask this question on people's birthdays every single year. What is the most important learning or lesson you've acquired in the last 12 months professionally?
Most important learning or lesson I've acquired in the past 12 months professionally. It's a really great question. I would say it's got to be around this idea of being vulnerable and there's no such thing as a dumb question. Something around that. I don't know the best way to frame it, but I think, for me, life in your career, you never have it figured out. There's never a role or a company or a function where you're like, I got it figured out. I think we have to, my biggest learning is to have just a really high sense of curiosity, to always be able to ask the questions, figure out how and why things work, be very vulnerable to say, I don't know the answer, or like, I don't know this yet. Like, can you help walk me through that? More so in the past 4.5 months for me at WeWork than the previous. At LinkedIn, I felt like I had a lot of it figured out, where here I'm kind of in this really uncomfortable situation where I'm trying to still figure a lot of it out.
Right.
So being very vulnerable and being able to be like, hey, I don't have it figured out. I have a lot of questions. Help me walk me through this. That's the biggest lesson that I've learned in the last few months.
Good one. I like it. Part B is you are a fresh, little over 1 year dad of twinsies, twin boys, identical twin boys. I read a statistic the other day that between 88 and 90% of the human population reproduces. So the odds of someone listening on this podcast are that they have kids, will have kids, or at some point, if they've got kids, or at least they know someone very close to them. So what is the most important learning or lesson you've acquired in the last 12 months being the father of 1-year-old twin boys?
Yeah. That's a great question. There's a lot. Can we extend this an hour?
Yeah, sure. Go for it. Block out your calendar. Get ready, audience. Here we go.
I think, for me, I think the biggest parallel of like being a father and a leader is around sacrifice, right? I think I've always loved seeing others succeed and be able to sacrifice my time to help, others be successful or trying my best at that. And, becoming a father over the last year, you just realize how much you have to sacrifice to be able to support these tiny humans as they go through these different stages of development, right? And there's so many parallels there. And you do have to sacrifice a lot. And you have to really, me and my wife, we've really had to, work together around what the sacrifice looks like and how do we do the best for our kids. And, for me, it's also really, it's helped me realize the bigger picture, that the day-to-day of our lives and of work is trivial compared to the bigger picture of why we're here on this earth, right? And raising kids and just getting so excited about each stage of development and what their life is going to be like in years from now. I think that same way around like my team here, and what they're learning now and what they're going through is really challenging, but they're going to get through it. It's transformation, and I can't wait to see what they grow up to be in their personal and professional lives years from now. So there's a couple things to unpack there. I think the amount of sacrifice that you have to help yourself and to help others really starts to become apparent when you're a parent. And this idea of just really looking at the big picture of development and the story of your children growing up, as well as the teams that you're working with and what their careers could look like. It gets you to start thinking way further ahead than just the day-to-day in front of you.
Hey everybody, thanks so much for listening. If you appreciated and enjoyed the episode, go ahead and make a comment on the post for the episode on LinkedIn. If you love the Naberhood podcast, we'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and give us a 5-star review on iTunes. Until next time, go get it.